This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Tragedy of Pudd'nhead Wilson by Mark Twain. Chapter 18. Roxana Commands. Gratitude and treachery are merely the two extremities of the same procession. You have seen all of it that is worth staying for when the band and the gaudy officials have gone by. Pudd'nhead Wilson's Calendar. Thanksgiving Day. Let us all give humble, hearty, and sincere thanks now, but the turkeys. In the island of Fiji they do not use turkeys, they use plumbers. It does not become you and me to sneer at Fiji. Pudd'nhead Wilson's Calendar. The Friday after the election was a rainy one in St. Louis. It rained all day long, and rained hard, apparently trying its best to wash that soot-blackened town white, but of course not succeeding. Toward midnight, Tom Driscoll arrived at his lodgings from the theater in the heavy downpour, and closed his umbrella and let himself in. But when he would have shut the door, he found that there was another person entering, doubtless another lodger. This person closed the door and tramped upstairs behind Tom. Tom found his door in the dark and entered it, and turned up the gas. When he faced about, lightly whistling, he saw the back of a man. The man was closing and locking his door from him. His whistle faded out, and he felt uneasy. The man turned around, a wreck of shabby old clothes, sodden with rain and all adrip, and showed a black face under an old slouch hat. Tom was frightened. He tried to order the man out, but the words refused to come, and the other man got the start. He said in a low voice, "Keep still. I's your mother." Tom sunk in a heap on a chair and gasped out, "It was mean of me and base, I know it. But I meant it for the best. I did indeed. I can swear it." Roxana stood a while looking mutely down on him while he writhed in shame, and went on incoherently babbling self-accusations mixed with pitiful attempts at explanation and palliation of his crime. Then she seated herself and took off her hat, and her unkempt masses of long brown hair tumbled down about her shoulders. "It wasn't no fault of yourn that ain't gray," she said sadly, noticing the hair. "I know it. I know it. I'm a scoundrel. But I swear I meant it for the best. It was a mistake, of course, but I thought it was for the best. I truly did." Roxana began to cry softly, and presently words began to find their way out between her sobs. They were uttered lamentingly rather than angrily. "Sell a person down de river, for de best? I wouldn't treat a dog so. I is all broke down and wore out now, and so I reckon it ain't in me to storm around no mo' like I used to when I is trampled on and 'bused. I don't know, but maybe it's so. Leastways, I's suffered so much that mournin' seemed to come mo' handy to me now than stormin'." These words should have touched Tom Driscoll, but if they did, that effect was obliterated by a stronger one which removed the heavy weight of fear which lay upon him, and gave his crushed spirit a most grateful rebound, and filled all his small soul with a deep sense of relief. But he kept prudently still, and ventured no comment. There was a voiceless interval of some duration now, in which no sounds were heard but the beating of the rain upon the panes, the sighing and complaining of the winds, and now and then a muffled sob from Roxana. The sobs became more and more infrequent, and at last ceased. Then the refugee began to talk again. "Shut down that light a little. More yet. A person that is hunted don't like the light. There, that'll do. I can see where you is, and that's enough. I's gwine to tell you the tale, and cut it just as short as I can, and then I'll tell you what you's got to do. That man that bought me ain't a bad man. He's good enough as planters go, and if he could 'a' had his way, I'd 'a' been a house servant in his family and been comfortable. But his wife, she was a Yank, and not right down good-lookin', and she riz up agin me straight off. So then they sent me out to the quarter 'mongst the common field hands. That woman weren't satisfied even with that, but she worked up the overseer agin me. She is that jealous and hateful. So the overseer, he had me out befo' day in the mornings, and worked me the whole long day, as long as there is any light to see by. And many's the lashings I got, 'cause I couldn't come up to work o' the strongest. That overseer was a Yank, too, out in New England, and anybody down south can tell you what that mean. They knows how to work a nigger to death, and they knows how to whale 'em, too. Whale 'em till they backs is welted like a washboard. Long at first my master said a good word for me to the overseer, but that is bad for me, for the missus, she find it out, and arter that I just ketched it at every turn. They weren't no mercy for me no mo'." Tom's heart was fired with fury against the planter's wife, and he said to himself, "But for that meddlesome fool, everything would have gone all right." He added a deep and bitter curse against her. The expression of this sentiment was fiercely written in his face, and stood thus revealed to Roxana by a white glare of lightning, which turned the somber dusk of the room into dazzling day at that moment. She was pleased and grateful, for did not that expression show that her child was capable of grieving for his mother's wrongs, and a feeling resentment toward her persecutors, a thing which she had been doubting? But her flash of happiness was only a flash, and went out again and left her spirit dark, for she said to herself, "He sold me down the river. He can't feel for a body long. This'll pass and go." Then she took up her tale again. "'Bout 10 days ago I is sayin' to myself that I couldn't last many mo' weeks. I is so wore out with the awful work and the lashin's, and so downhearted and miserable. And I didn't care no mo' nuther. Life weren't wuth nothin' to me if I got to go on like that. Well, when a body is in a frame of mind like that, what do a body care what a body do? They was a little sickly nigger wench 'bout 10-year-old that is good to me, and hadn't no mammy, po' thing, and I loved her, and she loved me, and she come out where I was workin', and she had a roasted tater, and tried to slip it to me, robbin' herself, you see, 'cause she knowed the overseer didn't give me 'nough to eat, and he ketched her at it, and give her a lick across the back with his stick, which is as thick as a broom handle, and she dropped screaming on the ground and squirming and wallering about in the dust like a spider that's got crippled. I couldn't stand it. All the hell fire that was ever in my heart flame up, and I snatched a stick out in his hand and laid him flat. He laid down moaning and cussing and all out of his head, and the niggers is plumb scared to death. They gathered round him to help him, and I jumped on his hoss and took off for the river as fast as I could go. I knowed what they would do with me. Soon as he got well, he would start in and work me to death if master let him, and if they didn't do that, they'd sell me further down the river, and that's the same thing. So I 'lowed to drown myself and get out of my troubles. It is getting towards dark. I is at the river in 2 minutes. Then I see a canoe, and I says, "They ain't no use to drown myself till I got to." So I ties the hoss in the edge of the timber and shove out on the river, keeping in under the shelter of the bluff bank and praying for the dark to shut down quick. I had a powerful good start, 'cause the big house is 3 mile back from the river, and only the work mules to ride there on, and only niggers ride 'em, and they ain't going to hurry. They'd give me all the chance they could. Before a body could go to the house and back, it'd be long past dark, and they couldn't track the hoss and find out which way I went till morning, and the niggers would tell 'em all the lies they could about it. Well, the dark come, and I went on a-spinning down the river. I paddled more'n 2 hours. Then I weren't worried no mo', so I quit paddling and floated down the current, considerin' what I was gwine to do if I didn't have to drown myself. I made up some plans and floated along, turnin' 'em over in my mind. Well, when it was a little past midnight, and I reckoned, and I had come 15 or 20 mile, I see the lights of a steamboat layin' at the bank, where they weren't no town and no wood yard, and putty soon I ketched the shape of the chimbley tops agin the stars, and then, good gracious me, I most jumped out of my skin for joy. It is the Grand Mogul. I was chambermaid on her for 8 seasons in the Cincinnati and Orleans trade. I slid long past. Don't see nobody stirrin' nowhere. Hear 'em a-hammerin' away in the engine room. Then I knowed what the matter was. Some of the machinery's broke. I got a show below the boat and turned the canoe loose. Then I goes long up, and they is just one plank out, and I stepped aboard the boat. It is powerful hot. Deckums and roustabouts is sprawled around, sleepin' on the fo'castle. The second mate, Jim Bangs, he sot there on the bitts with his head down asleep, 'cause that's the way the second mate stand the cap'n's watch. And then the old watchman, Billy Hatch, he is a-noddin' on the companionway, and I knowed 'em all, and land, but did they look good. I says to myself, I wish the old marster had come along now and try to take me. Bless your heart, I's 'mong friends, I is. So I tromped right along 'mongst 'em, and went on to the biler deck and way back aft to the ladies' cabin guard, and sot down there in the same cheer that I'd sot in most 100,000,000 times, I reckon, and it is just home again, I tell you. In 'bout an hour I heard the ready bell jingle, and then the racket begin. Putty soon I heard a gong strike. "Set her back on the outside," I says to myself. I reckon I knows that music. I heard a gong again. "Come ahead on the inside," I says. Gong again. "Stop the outside." Gong again. "Come ahead on the outside. Now, we's pinted for St. Louis, and I's out of the woods, and ain't got to drown myself at all. I knowed the Mogul is in St. Louis trade now, you see. It is just fair daylight when we passed our plantation, and I seed a gang of niggers and white folks huntin' up and down the show and troublin' theyselves a good deal 'bout me. But I weren't troublin' myself none 'bout them. 'Bout that time Sally Jackson, that used to be my second chambermaid and is head chambermaid now, she come out on the guard, and is powerful glad to see me, and so is all the officers. And I told 'em I'd got kidnapped and sold down the river, and they made me up $20 and give it to me. And Sally, she rigged me out with good clothes, and when I got here I went straight to where you used to was, and then I come to this house, and they say you's away but 'spected back every day. So I didn't dast go down the river to Dawson's, 'cause I might miss you. Well, last Monday I was passin' by one of them places in 4th Street where they sticks up runaway nigger bills and helps to catch 'em, and I seed my master. I most flopped down on the ground, I felt so gone. He had his back to me and is talking to the man and giving him some bills. Nigger bills, I reckon, and I's the nigger. He's offering a reward, that's it. Ain't I right, don't you reckon?" Tom had been gradually sinking into a state of ghastly terror, and he said to himself now, "I'm lost, no matter what turn things take. This man has said to me that he thinks there was something suspicious about that sail. He said he had a letter from a passenger on the Grand Mogul saying that Roxy came here on that boat, and that everybody on board knew all about the case. So he says that her coming here instead of flying to a free state looks bad for me, and that if I don't find her for him, and that pretty soon, he'll make trouble for me. I never believed that story. I couldn't believe she would be so dead to all motherly instincts as to come here, knowing the risk she would run of getting me in irremediable trouble. And after all, here she is. And I stupidly swore I would help find her, thinking it was perfectly safe thing to promise. If I venture to deliver her up, but how can I help myself? I've got to do that or pay the money. And where's the money to come from? I should think that if he would swear to treat her kindly hereafter, and she says herself that he is a good man, and if he would swear to never allow her to be overworked or ill-fed, or... A flash of lightning exposed Tom's pallid face, drawn and rigid with these worrying thoughts. Roxana spoke up sharply now, and there was apprehension in her voice. "Turn up that light. I want to see your face better. There now, let me look at you. Chambers, you's as white as your shirt. Has you see that man? Has he been to see you?" "Yes." "When?" "Monday noon." "Monday noon? Was he on my track?" He thought he was. That is, he hoped he was. This is the bill you saw." He took it out of his pocket. "Read it to me." She was panting with excitement, and there was a dusky glow in her eyes that Tom could not translate with certainty, but there seemed to be something threatening about it. The handbill had the usual rude woodcut of a turbaned Negro woman running, with the customary bundle on a stick over her shoulder, and the heading in bold type, $100 reward. Tom read the bill aloud, at least the part that described Roxana and named the master and his St. Louis address and the address of the 4th Street agency, but he left out the item that applicants for the reward might also apply to Mr. Thomas Driscoll. "Give me the bill." Tom had folded it and was putting it in his pocket. He felt a chilly streak creeping down his back, but said as carelessly as he could, "The bill? Why, it isn't any use to you. You can't read it. What do you want with it?" "Give me the bill." Tom gave it to her, but with a reluctance which he could not entirely disguise. "Did you read it all to me?" "Certainly I did." "Hold up your hand and swear to it." Tom did it. Roxana put the bill carefully away in her pocket, with her eyes fixed upon Tom's face all the while. Then she said, "You's lying." "What would I want to lie about it for?" "I don't know, but you is. That's my opinion, anyways. But never mind about that. When I see that man, I was that scared that I could scarcely wobble home. Then I give a nigger man $1 for these clothes, and I ain't been in a house since, night nor day, till now. I blacked my face and laid hid in the cellar of a old house that's burnt down daytimes, and robbed the sugar hogsheads and grain sacks on the wharf nights to get something to eat, and never dast to try to buy nothing, and I's most starved. And I never dast to come near this place till this rainy night, when they ain't no people round scarcely. But tonight I've been a-standing in the dark alley ever since night come, waiting for you to go by, and here I is." She fell to thinking. Presently she said, "You seed that man at noon last Monday?" "Yes." "I seed him middle of that afternoon. He hunted you up, didn't he?" "Yes." "Did he give you the bill that time?" "No, he hadn't got it printed yet." Roxana darted a suspicious glance at him. "Did you help him fix up the bill?" Tom cursed himself for making that stupid blunder, and tried to rectify it by saying he remembered now that it was at noon Monday that the man gave him the bill. Roxana said, "You's lying again, sho." Then she straightened up and raised her finger. "Now den, I's gwine to ask you a question, and I wants to know how you's gwine to get around it. You knowed he is arter me, and if you run off, 'stid of stayin' here to help him, he'd know dey is something wrong 'bout dis business, and den he would inquire about you, and that would take him to yo' uncle, and yo' uncle would read the bill and see that you been sellin' a free nigger down the river, and you know him, I reckon. He'd tear up that will and kick you outen the house. Now den, you answer me dis question. Hain't you told that man that I would be sure to come here, and den you would fix it so he could set a trap and catch me?" Tom recognized that neither lies nor arguments could help him any longer. He was in a vice, with the screw turned on, and out of it there was no budging. His face began to take on an ugly look, and presently he said with a snarl, "Well, what could I do? You see yourself that I was in his grip and couldn't get out." Roxy scorched him with a scornful gaze a while. Then she said, "What could you do? You could be Judas to your own mother to save your worthless hide. Would anybody believe it? No, a dog couldn't. You is the low-downest, orneriest hound that was ever pupped into this world, and I's responsible for it." And she spat on him. He made no effort to resent this. Roxy reflected a moment. Then she said, "Now I'll tell you what you's gwine to do. You's gwine to give dat man de money dat you's got laid up, and make him wait till you can go to de judge and get de rest, and buy me free again." "Thunder! What are you thinking of? Go and ask him for $300 and odd? What would I tell him I want it for, pray?" Roxy's answer was delivered in a serene and level voice. "You'll tell him you's sold me to pay yo' gambling debts, and that you lied to me and was a villain, and that I 'quires you to get that money and buy me back again. Why, you've gone stark mad. He would tear the will to shreds in a minute. Don't you know that?" "Yes, I does." "Then you don't believe I'm idiot enough to go to him, do you?" "I don't believe nothing 'bout it. I knows you's a-goin'. I knows it, 'cause you knows that if you don't raise that money I'll go to him myself, and then he'll sell you down the river, and you can see how you like it." Tom rose, trembling and excited, and there was an evil light in his eye. He strode to the door and said he must get out of this suffocating place for a moment and clear his brain in the fresh air so that he could determine what to do. The door wouldn't open. Roxy smiled grimly and said, "I's got the key, honey. Set down. You needn't clear up yo' brain none to find out what you's gwine to do. I knows what you's gwine to do." Tom sat down and began to pass his hands through his hair with a helpless and desperate air. Roxy said, "Is that man in this house?" Tom glanced up with a surprised expression and asked, "What gave you such an idea?" "You done it, gwine out to clear your brain. In the first place, you ain't got none to clear. And in the second place, you ornery I told on you. You's the low-downest hound that ever... But I done told you that before. Now then, this is Friday. You can fix it up with that man and tell him you's gwine away to get the rest of the money, and that you'll be back with it next Tuesday or maybe Wednesday. You understand?" Tom answered sullenly, "Yes." "And when you gets the new bill of sale that sells me back to my own self, take and send it in the mail to Mr. Pudd'nhead Wilson, and write on the back that he's to keep it till I come. You understand?" "Yes." "That's all, then. Take your umbrella and put on your hat." "Why?" "'Cause you's gwine to see me home to the wharf. You see this knife? I's toted it round since the day I seed that man, and bought these clothes in it. If he catch me, I's gwine to kill myself with it. Now start along, and go soft, and lead the way, and if you gives a sign in this house, or if anybody comes up to you in the street, I's gwine to jam it right into you. Chambers, does you believe me when I says that?" "It's no use to bother me with that question. I know your word's good." "Yeah, it's different from yourn. Shut the light out and move along. Here's the key." They were not followed. Tom trembled every time a late straggler brushed by them on the street, and half expected to feel the cold steel in his back. Roxy was right at his heels, and always in reach. After tramping a mile, they reached a wide vacancy on the deserted wharves, and in this dark and rainy desert they parted. As Tom trudged home, his mind was full of dreary thoughts and wild plans, but at last he said to himself wearily, "There is but one way out. I must follow her plan, but with a variation. I will not ask for the money and ruin myself. I will rob the old skinflint." End of chapter 18.